Coming up next, what Fox News lease wheel is off this week, but we have Loretta Powers in with us, taking a look at some of the legal stories making headlines. Speaking of Samsung and the Galaxy Note 7, which I thought was such a neat phone when they were advertising. It's got a little stylus that you put in. It had a little retractable stylus. You took it out and you could write on the phone, and stuff. But didn't work out so well. It kept catching fire and stuff and causing all sorts of problems. Is that going to be, are we going to have a suit against that? Is there going to be a class action suit, do you think?
It's not a matter of if this becomes a class action lawsuit. It's a matter of when. And there are some very meritorious claims here. 13 people were burned. Dozens more had damaged property. Not to mention there are millions who paid for phone services that they could not use.
And it is so hard sometimes to get a replacement phone and to get things hooked up and to get all of your information back. So I can imagine the frustration on the folks who are having to go through this.
Right. And right now, Samsung is offering a $100 voucher if you stay within the Samsung family and a $25 voucher if you go to a different company for your phone. And lawyers are basically saying that's not enough.
It doesn't sound like much. Here's some chump change. Fox News legal analyst Loretta Powers, we're talking about the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 recall having a potential to result in a class action lawsuit. And one story I had seen about this, Loretta, was a story about airplanes and passengers with these phones. Even though there's a recall, how do we know every phone has been returned? So what is the liability of an airline and or the passenger who's on an airplane, still has the Samsung Galaxy 7 and a fire erupts?
Well, I was flying just last week, and they said if you have this phone, you need to let yourself be known to the cabin crew immediately. So I think they're doing everything that they can to prevent this phone from getting into the skies. But if, unfortunately, the worst happens, then we're looking at a huge disaster.
I mean, let's say it catches on fire, but the plane lands safely. Does the liability lie solely on the owner of the phone for not turning it in, or can the owner say, hey, I didn't know about it, I don't watch the news?
It could. Both the airline and the individual can be liable for it because the reasonable person knows that this phone is dangerous, and especially after they make the announcement saying, please, you cannot fly with this phone.
Fox News legal analyst Loretta Powers in for Lease Wheel this week. And another thing we'd like to talk about, Loretta, is Anthony Weiner. He could soon be indicted in his newest sexting scandal. So what are all of the charges that he could face?
Well, he's looking at both federal charges and state law charges for allegedly sexting a 15-year-old girl. New York can go after him, as well as North Carolina, where the teenager was from. And under federal law, our feds, they really want to make sure that children are not exploited. So if you induce a minor into doing explicit acts, then you're looking at a minimum of 15 years in federal prison and a maximum of 30.
And it's so much more disturbing because he's a former New York congressman. He had to leave office after the first scandal involving him and sexting. And so he should be held to a higher standard because he was a congressman. So when somebody is in that kind of a position, if they're caught for sexting an underage minor or something else similar, should their penalty be bigger than if it were somebody in the general public?
You know, what they can do is make an example out of him and charge him for every separate instance of this case. So if this happens for a period of months and there's several different instances where they exchange text messages and Skype sessions, they could go after 30 years per incident. I don't think they will, but they could definitely make an example out of him if they wanted to.
I think he's made an example out of himself.
He's lost everything.
He really has. And yet his estranged wife is an aide to Hillary Clinton, who could become the next president of the U.S.
Right. I have no idea why people would do this to their spouse.
Neither do we. But it provides for interesting commentary.
Doesn't it, though? 10 minutes before 7 o'clock, and that was sitting in for Lease Wheel, Loretta Powers, Fox News legal analyst.